In the unforgiving world of Outwards, danger awaits at every turn. Bitter cold, searing heat, twisted monstrosities and mythical creatures. Survival hinges on a single thread of determination. And I, an ordinary individual with no extraordinary skills, will venture into the deepest dungeons and most forsaken domains to unravel the dark truth behind the scourge that threatens humanity. But I must never forget that my quest is one for survival, and to prevail, I need to adapt. This is 100 Days in Outwards, Definitive Edition. I woke up to a breathtaking sunset, and took a refreshing stroll along the shore. I managed to find a torch and some much needed clothes, and it soon became apparent that I had survived a shipwreck, a fortunate outcome in a dire situation. Ethan, a fellow survivor, kindly offered to keep watch while I took a short nap to regain my strength. I woke up on the floor near my bed, so it seems like that dude carried me all the way over here, but thought it would be funny to let me sleep on the floor. I searched around and found some useful items, like a backpack to store my stuff, a sleeping bag for sleeping in the bag, and food and water to sustain me on my journey. I also found a chest where I could save stuff that wasn't worth carrying around. After all, we have a limit for how much we can carry on our bag. I left my house, and there was a huge crowd just outside my door. Pretty much just like in real life, everyone was trying to suck money out of me. As it stands, my entire bloodline is suffering from crippling debt, and I have 5 days to pay 150 silvers, if I don't want to lose my house, that is. I told everyone to go take a walk on the park, and asked the local guard to tell me about the surrounding area. It seems like there is a giant mountain at the middle of the map, and I can unlock magic if I go there, which is pretty cool. I took a stroll around Cierzo, and gathered anything and everything that could be turned over for some sweet profits. I also accepted this quest to get my hands on a giant mushroom, and after selling everything that I didn't need, I was finally ready to adventure into the known lands of Chersonese, one of the many regions of Outwards. But Barak didn't let me through the gate. He told me that I wasn't ready to go outside yet. It was probably because of the fact that I had a freaking pitchfork as a weapon, but whatever. He also mentioned not to even think about sneaking out by using the storage tunnel under the lighthouse. You know me, I would never do that. But when I arrived there, I found this weird creature, and when I dodged her attack, I noticed that my backpack was actually slowing down my dodge, so I made sure to drop it on the ground. And when I least expected it, a second fellow appeared. I was a little surprised, but equipped with my trustworthy pitchfork, I made sure to take them down. The combat in Outward is a little bit like Dark Souls. Each weapon has a different light and heavy attack, and you can avoid damage, either by rolling or defending against the enemy's attacks. There is also skills and spells that you can learn throughout the game, but the similarities end there. Every weapon has 100% physical damage reduction when defending, so rolling isn't always the best option, even if you are not using a shield. It's also worth mentioning that Outward also has a poise mechanic. If you perform attacks during certain windows, you can throw the enemies off balance, leaving them wide open to be attacked. Furthermore, combat in this game is a lot more about preparation and strategy than just about the combat in itself, but more on that later. I took a little bit of damage from the previous barrel, so I used a bandage to recover some health, and since my pockets were already full, I returned to the city to sell the loot. I didn't know at this point, but you can't actually keep everything that you find. Even with a backpack, your space is limited, so you need to be selective and only keep the most valuable items that could sell for a better price. I sold everything that I got for 34 silvers, and used some of it to buy a nomad backpack. Now we are able to carry around 50 kilos, double of what we previously could. I took a little nap and made my way to the end of the Cierzo storage. This was when I found myself at an unknown, mysterious beach. It was already night outside, and I tried to figure out what was our location on the map. We don't actually have a marker telling us where we are, so we need to guess it based on the landmarks that we see. We are roughly around here. I kept walking forward and found this giant lobster and a poor, injured man near it. It seems like he was attacked by pistol shrimp and asked me for help, so I gave him one of the life potions that I found while scavenging the city. He was very thankful and gave me a tribal favor in return. I'm pretty sure that we can use that instead of the 150 silvers to avoid losing the house. I collected this blue sand, as the blacksmith told me that he could make some armor with it, and engaged in combat with Pistol Weirdo. He did live up to his name and shot me straight in the face. The heavier the armor we have equipped, the greater our poison, and since we were just using some random clothes, we quickly lost our balance. It took me some time to learn how to dodge his attacks, and from all the dodging and spamming, I ended up running out of stamina mid-fight. We had a little stare contest for a while, and I finished the job. I got 2 larva eggs and 1 insect husk from his body, and went back to get my backpack. You probably already noticed, but our health isn't regenerating, and that is because if I don't use some bandages or eat some carefully cooked food, it just won't. I saw these giant shells, and when I went to investigate, I actually found a hidden dungeon. I carefully explored it and caught sight of one more of those pistol maniacs. I was confident that I could feed him, so I proceeded, and with my dodging skills mastered, and a little bit of environmental help, he went down. I found a lot of weird food inside this junk pile, but apart from that, there was nothing else to see. This was actually one of the weaker dungeons, and from now on, things will only get more interesting. I killed another lobster, gathered more blue sand, and when I was drinking some water, I noticed that it gives you a stamina buff for a short period of time. That's right, eating and drinking gives you different buffs based on what you consume. Things like increased damage and resistance, and a bunch of other cool stuff. I was trying to return home and found this wild hyena lurking around. I turned off my lantern since the enemies can detect you better if you have light on you, and engaged in combat. I managed to kill it without taking a single hit, which was a good thing considering how much health we had. I found this caravaner out in the wilds, and although he had some interesting goods, I was more interested in selling my stuff. I did buy a pistol from him, but I soon discovered that it wouldn't work without bullets. I just didn't think about it, alright. I kept making my way home and was suddenly ambushed by 2 hyenas. It was admittedly a little bit too much for me, and I was knocked down. You can imagine how surprised I was when I discovered that I was kidnapped by a bunch of filthy bandits, and was now inside a prison without any of my items. It seems like this place is called Vendaval Fortress, and I need to get out of here as fast as possible. I picked up a tethered attire and a pickaxe from the ground, and went to explore the prison. I noticed that there were some other prisoners alongside me, and that I could do tasks for them in exchange for some items, and learned that I could dig for iron every day until the guards were satisfied enough with my work to let me inside the fortress. This isn't that great of an option though, because I need to give my tribe favor to the Chamber Lady of Cierzo. I could also jump into this giant hole, but it didn't seem like a good idea. I gave an extra pickaxe that I found to this prisoner, drank some water, and received a quest from this lady. She wanted a new sheath dagger to escape this place, and since she taught me how to craft it and I already had materials, I gave it to her. She was pretty pleased and rewarded me with 10 silvers and a backstab. The skill, I mean. I found some other items while wandering around and slept for 5 hours to recover my health and burn stats. When you make strenuous activities like running, your max stamina is reduced, which the game refers to as burnt stamina. The same applies to your max health when you take damage, and you can recover these burnt stats by sleeping or eating special foods. I heard some swoosh sounds when I was sleeping, and when I woke up, I found that the lady from before had been mercilessly murdered. This didn't seem to motivate me though, and I also tried my luck. I threatened the guards to let me out, and got my ass handed to me. with few items that I had gotten confiscated, and the clock ticking, things weren't looking up. I went by the safe route and worked every day until they let me inside another compartment of the fortress. Here I learned how to make life potions and was tasked by the chief himself to make some meat stews for the warriors. I also found this room where my stolen items were being stored. I could forcibly open the gate, but that would make everyone in the fortress aware of my presence. And since I didn't want to be knocked out again, I refrained from doing that. Instead, I kept drinking river water until I contracted a disease. I could probably cure it with a tea, but I'm not British, and we don't have the necessary ingredients right now. I kept doing my chores, and eventually I was able to bribe one of the guards to take me to the armory room. I gave him 30 silvers, and I was finally able to recover my items. He also helped me escaping the fortress, and since it was already day 5, I ran back to the city to save my property. I found this mysterious being on the way, but I sure as hell didn't want to mess with it. It looked way too menacing, and we were running out of time. I arrived without any major incidents, and managed to find some bullets on the way. I also made sure to collect a ton of berries, because they give stamina regen when eaten. Upon arrival, I immediately gave my tribal favor to the Chamber Lady, and she told me to talk to Olialei and Izen. Both of them were leaving Cierzo and going to different cities to pursue their future, and they invited me to meet them there. I was then to choose the path that I would take for my future. There were 4 different cities with 4 different factions, and I could choose only one. Depending on which one I choose, the following quests and outcome of the whole world will be different. And you know, choosing my future is already a hard season as it is in real life. So I will put it on hold for now, and decide when I get a little stronger. I went to the blacksmith and learned that I will also need a ton of silver to make the armor that I want. I don't have nearly enough right now, so I sold the items that I didn't need, and bought a bow, and our first real weapon, a claymore. I also use 2 linen cloth to make bandages. They recover a little of health and even stop the bleeding, which will surely come in handy. I hit the sack, and as you can see, the diseases in this game won't go away, even if you go to sleep. You really need to take your meds. I met these trainers where I could buy some passive and active skills, bought a tea to cure my disease, and was finally ready to go on a new adventure. I had 3 goals in mind. 1. Unlock mana and learn magic. 2. Get rich as hell. And 3. Get overpowered, which means buying new skills and equipment. The other regions of the game are even more dangerous than the first one, so I needed to be prepared. Our first destination will be this bandit camp near the city. They probably have good loot, and they are really close, so I want to head there first. On my way I had the opportunity to test the pistol for the first time. It dealt an incredible amount of damage, and it also had a good range, so I was pretty impressed. The only downside is that I needed to reload it after each shot, which will be near impossible in the middle of barrel, but it is still a good asset nonetheless. And I know that I said that I was going to the bandit camp, but I ended up discovering this hidden dungeon and getting distracted. There I found a bunch of troglodytes and was able to test my bow on them. The aiming mechanic was kinda weird, and definitely different from other games, but it wasn't bad at all. I found this locked door which required a tiny aquamarine to open, and fought more troglodytes, this time trying out the Claymore. It had a good damage and impact, but hitbox felt a little off, and I honestly didn't like it that much. I kept on going while mining these mana stones on the way, and found this special troglodyte at the end. He is most likely the boss of this place, so I used a fire rag that I crafted using linen cloth and oil to give some elemental damage to my sword. Even then, the fight was long, and he was pretty tough, but his attacks patterns were simple, so I got the upper hand. I dropped some less valuable stuff to have some stay for stuff that he dropped, and went inside the main room. There I found this creepy ass statue and a giant mushroom shield. This must be what the lady from earlier was talking about. The surprises were not over though, as I found this traumatic view just in the next room. I still have no idea what that was, but I just took his heart and ran away. Since my bag was almost full, I returned to Cierzo to sell my stuff, and departed myself with a really good problem to have. I had so much stuff to sell that the caravaner just didn't have enough money to buy it from me. This was easily solved as I just sold the rest to the other merchants of the city, but it is still a cool problem to see. And after discovering that I can deconstruct stuff to get some of its materials back, I completed the Mushroom Shield quest and was rewarded with 70 silvers. I also made sure to sell my claymore and buy an iron sword and iron knuckles before going to the bandit camp. And this happened. Those filthy bandits had put a trap just outside their base. And I mean, it makes sense since they are bandits, but it is still underhanded and pretty rude behavior. I used a bandage to stop the bleeding, as it was dealing way too much damage, and went inside their fort. I knew that this place would be swarming with bad guys, so I carefully sneaked around and killed one at a time, instead of going all out and attracting everyone's attention. And things were going pretty well, until the moment that I came across the ice wizard that was protecting the fort. This was the first time that I saw someone using offensive magic against me, so I was being pretty cautious. And oh boy, was I right. He managed to catch me lacking and almost one-shotted me with a single spell. I was frightened to say the least, and panic rolled my way until a safe spot. After a while my stamina and courage had recovered, and I gave him a good beating. And being the greedy bastard that I am, I went around looking for loot instead of paying attention to my health. This proved to be a fatal mistake, and I had my ass hammered to smithereens. I woke up in the middle of the night, thirsty and with my items confiscated. Fortunately, I quickly found my lost equipment and went to get my revenge. This was once again a stupid mistake, because my stats were completely burned from being knocked down, and I should have slept instead. Things were a little different this time though. I appeared in a safe place with my items and backpack near me. There was also a letter and alcohol. What more could I ask for? It seems like I was rescued by a gentleman called GAP, so I really need to thank him later. I lighted the campfire that he left, collected some water from the river and boiled it to make it safe for drinking. I also cooked some food to make it rot slower and become more fulfilling. And with the predator bones that I got from the hyenas, I crafted a fang sword. I had bought the recipe from the blacksmith, and apart from dealing more damage than a regular sword, it also inflicts bleeding, which is low-key overpowered. It's worth mentioning that you don't actually need blueprints to craft something. You can experiment and get lucky, or just check it up on the internet. For this playthrough, however, I avoided doing that. When I was trying to return home, I met this chicken, who was responsible for single-handedly taking away half of my health. This was obviously a sign to stop using the gauntlets. I loved their moveset, but thanks to short range and low impact, they were just too difficult for me to play with. I set up a tent and took a beauty sleep to restore my max health and stamina, and barely managed to take down this bandit and his dog that I found on the road. I took a lot of damage and even ended up contracting another disease from the hyena biting me. This wasn't a problem though, because I had the power of protein by my side. In this game, eating meat gives you health regen, so I did just that. I returned to Cierzo and sold everything for a whopping 186 silvers. I also made sure to exchange 100 silvers for a bar of gold, since it weighs less and has the same value. I bought a shield and some bandages and returned to the bandit camp to finish my service. I did find these on the way, which was pretty disturbing. Fortunately, the enemies hadn't respawned yet, but that didn't stop me from dying like a useless piece of garbage. And here I was, thinking that I was prepared this time around. I retrieved my items, and after dealing with them, what was left to do was explore the main building of the fort. But I wasn't going to be careless this time, however. I placed 3 tripwire traps. These can be easily bought or crafted, and in order for them to work, I armed them with iron spikes that I made using iron scraps. I deemed it enough, and challenged the Bandit King. I tried to fight him head-on at first, but I rapidly noticed that it wouldn't work, and ran away to my traps. Thing is that my calculations were pretty far from accurate, and I ended up dying again. Thank God the enemies in this game don't recover their health even if you die. So I just fought him again using a more defensive playstyle, and got better of him. I then picked up my juicy loot and went back home. From all our adventures, we managed to accumulate 288 silvers. A far cry from the 850 needed to make the Blue Sand set. But it was still pretty good, so I didn't let that motivate me. I bought a luxurious tent, so we could have a better time sleeping in Wild, and headed off into a new crusade. This time, the giant Mana Mountain in the middle of the map was our goal. Things don't often go our way though, and I was ambushed by 3 blood-seeking hyenas, mere minutes after leaving Cierzo. They proved way too doggy powerful, and I ended up being saved by GAP once again. I did manage to return to the course, but I was once again distracted by a mysterious dungeon. This time I was greeted by a friendly creature called Immaculate. He offered me a fur armor to help me in my journey, and I returned the favor by stealing all his belongings. This is definitely the start of what I call a good friendship. I climbed to the top of the mountain, and surprisingly, there was nothing there. At least that's what I thought at first, because I did find this stone mantis. He unconditionally beat my ass, so I was forced to run away, and recurred to plan B. Trap the fuck out of him. Even this wasn't enough to kill him, but it at least allowed me to run past him and recover my backpack. And with my sword buffed and my health partially healed, I proved that I was the hardest rock of the mountain. He dropped an interesting material called palladium, and I found a strange rusted sword on the spot that he was guarding. I bet we will be able to refine it in future or something, so it is pretty cool. I also learned that I probably needed to enter the mountain through the entrances that I saw along the way, if I wanted to unlock mana. But you know how this works. My greedy ass couldn't waste opportunity of mining a juicy mana stone and try to chant the mountain in a somewhat unusual way. This was obviously a terrible idea, and I woke up back in Cierzo. Since I finally had monetary power, I ordered a blue sand helmet and slept for an entire day waiting for it to be completed. I then gathered more blue sand, ordered the armor to be made, slept for another day, and woke up thirsty as hell. As any normal being would, I filled my water skin with river water and drank it. But we can't forget that this ain't a normal game, so I contracted an indigestion and passed out. Anyways, I completed my entire set with only 49 silvers left to spare, and headed off to the Conflux Mountain. You also probably already noticed it, but it started to snow, and the temperature crashed even lower than Bitcoin. Thanks to this, I was forced to walk around with a torch, and to make regular breaks to warm myself up at campfire. My efforts proved insufficient though, and I caught a cold. This is certainly because of the fact that even though our new armor is pretty awesome at reducing the damage taken, its temperature insulation is pure trash. In fact, it would be better to walk around naked, just like in real life. There are 3 entrances to the Conflux Mountain, and I entered through the one located towards the top. There was a nice wizard protecting the entrance, but I sneaked behind him and punched him to death. And this dungeon was a tricky one. There were a bunch of poisonous troglodytes, strategically placed traps, and even rock mantis. But I prioritized my survivability above everything else, and retreated when I needed. I was then trying to figure out where I needed to go, when I was startled by this silver chariot. My stats were burned from all the fighting, but I was confident that I could take him down, although he politely disagreed. I was knocked out for a few hours and placed a bunch of traps when I returned. After that, I just needed to bait him to that place and finish him off when he was at low health. Always remember, work smarter, not harder. He dropped the broken golem rapier, and even though its stats weren't that good, it seemed like it could be useful in future, so I took it with me. I got to this derailed terrain, and there were some broken golems inside it, which means that they were being transported to some place when something happened. And by the looks of it, they are a machine rather than a living being, which means that they were probably created by humans. Kinda interesting. I then found this pretty good claymore and kept exploring the dungeon, until I was ambushed by two mana mantis. It was a precarious situation, but I bugged one of them and killed the other using everything that I had at my disposal, including my lantern. With the first one down, I placed some traps to help me take care of the second, and proceeded to the elevator. This was when I accidentally stepped on a trap and died to the bleeding. I then woke up near the Vendaval Fortress, where I chilled for a bit before going back to the Conflux Mountain. This time, however, I got in from the bottom entrance, and there was a really well-equipped fellow that offered to watch my back. I obviously exploited his sympathy and made him fight everyone for me, and he even handled two mana mantis at once, so he was truly strong. And from all the carnage and chests, my backpack was filled to the brim with valuable loot, so I returned home and sold everything for a net profit of 800 silvers. A freak ton of money for someone that had 49 silvers moments ago. I spent some of that money to buy grapple beetles, linen cloth and blood mushrooms from City Alchemist. I used the cloths to craft fire rags and bandages, and the other two to make life potions. These can instantly heal your health, so they are good to use mid-combat. And something I haven't told yet is that every equipment has durability, but unlike most games, it actually matters here. The lower the durability of an item, the less effective it is. If it is a weapon, it deals less damage, and if it is an armor, it protects you less. It doesn't go down crazy fast, as better equipment have better durability, but it decreases just enough for you to need to repair it every once in a while. You can do that while resting or pay a blacksmith to do it for you. I then stocked up what I didn't need and headed outside. On my way I found this pirate hideout and couldn't resist to check it out. As the name suggested, there was a skeleton pirate inside, and for some reason I wasn't dealing any damage. I figured that he must be resistant to physical damage since he's an undead, but since I still didn't learn magic, there is not much that I can do. I decided to run past him to see what he was hiding, and I found a strange note. I didn't have time to read it, but I saw that I received a new quest, and since we can't beat him yet, let's just ignore it and go back to the Holy Mission's Conflux path. I picked up the items that I couldn't before, and adventured myself even deeper into the mountain. There are a bunch of creepy statues and ugly troglodytes in here, so I really wanna leave as fast as possible. And they must have heard my prayers, because they immediately transported me to a new place. I was in the middle entrance of the mountain, and there were some hot jail troglodytes in my area. Well, I'm not into that kind of stuff, so I will just return to the bottom entrance. This time though, I chose a different path and went into the deepest level. I confronted this dinosaur-like abomination, and even though I was able to deal a decent amount of damage, she was way too powerful, and I had to run. But just like the girl I met yesterday, no matter how far I run, she just wouldn't let me alone. Now that I'm thinking about it, it must be because I stole her wallet. But anyways, I ran so much that I arrived at this giant room, and with 02 still behind me, I gave up on my life and accepted the kiss of death. I was then saved by this lady, who also told me that I could touch the crystal at the center of the chamber to unlock mana. But I have some unfinished business before I do that. I placed a friendly number of traps and called 02 over for a conversation. They weren't enough to kill her, but I managed to finish her off with a clever kiting technique that I created. I got a ton of good stuff and sacrificed part of my max health and stamina to unlock mana, while learning Spark in the process. Spark is a tiny fire explosion that deals negligible damage, but it can be used in combination with other spells for greater effects. I also asked the first watcher to teach me how to cast a fire sigil, and with this, we can finally start using one of the many types of magic in Outwards. We will see it in action soon enough, but for now, I bought this Scholar Circlet from the Fourth Watcher, sold my stuff, and explored the rest of the Conflux Mountain. It was a very long ride, but I ended up in a prison alongside a mysterious monster thanks to one of the defeat scenarios. I wasn't crazy enough to fight it head on, so I placed as many traps as I could, and unlocked the beast. But despite being damaged by more than 6 traps, he was still alive and still managed to beat me. At least I didn't need to return to Cierzo by foot. And if you are wondering why I didn't use magic, it is because I need firestones to conjure it, and that's something that I don't currently have. But don't worry, they are easy to make and I crafted a handful of them, alongside with a Fang Shield and Axe. And since I'm here, I will also take the time to learn Talus Cleaver and Shield Charge. The former is a weapon skill that requires a one-handed axe to be used, and inflicts pain and cripple, which reduces the enemy physical resistance and movement speed. And Lather is a rush forward with your shield that deals high impact damage. I also learned passive skills that give me extra health and etc. And now that I'm able to use magic, I went back to Daddy Bones' hideout and gave him a good beating. The note said something about available treasure located on a buried old ship's cabin, so I will definitely see if I can find it. After that, I headed south to greet our old friends on the Vendable Fortress. There was a heavily armored bandit just outside the door, but he wasn't a match for our new weapons and skills. He dropped an incredibly valuable, but also heavy loot, so I had to retreat for now, since I literally couldn't carry anything more. And this has been kind of a problem since the very start, so I will solve it right now. Something that I didn't tell you is that there is a locked door on the bandit fort. You need 2 power coils to open it, and there is a very good bag inside. I opened a ton of supply crates, and now that I finally had what I needed, I headed there and got my new backpack. This one can carry a whopping 110 kilos, more than double what we could before, so it will be a huge help from now on. I took the opportunity to clean the camp since it had already resetted, and planned to return to Vendable Fortress. On the way I found that menacing creature from earlier, and decided to fight it head on. This was clearly a consequence of my inflated ego from all the small victories I have been having, but nothing better than a good beating to put a fool in its place. While unconscious, I was captured by the bandits and put in prison, but I didn't want to repeat the whole process once again, so I tried jumping in the hole. To my surprise, I actually survived and ended up in the near beach. I was thirsty though, so I tried to satiate my mortal needs by drinking salt water, which made me pass out again. I was clearly losing my mind at this point, and even though I didn't have my equipment, I at least recovered my backpack, so I cooked some stuff and entered the fortress. They weren't hostile at first and even offered me some suspicious help, but their true colors were quickly shown when I refused. I defeated the 3 guys at the entrance, after a few tries, and started exploring the fortress. I found this ornate chest and 6 levers, pulled the wrong one and got trapped inside a dungeon. I eventually returned to the fortress and finally recovered my items. With my equipment back, I granted purification to those possessed fools and met the leader of the circus. I wouldn't commit the same error twice, so I placed a fuck ton of traps that easily dealt with her subjects, and got one-shotted 1 second later. This time I made sure to fight her with my max health intact, and managed to achieve victory. I got some pretty good loot, and headed towards our next objective, the bandits' prison on the south part of the map. I easily cleared the outside camp, and reunited with an unchained nightmare bringer on the inside. I participated in some high-risk place to get him imprisoned in his jail, and made my preparations. This is how it went. I was clearly trembling in fear, but it ended up well. I got my hands on the well-deserved reward, and found this dungeon hidden nearby. A pile of bones at the entrance, always a good sign. New enemies that I have never seen before. Let's see how it goes. Alright, a boss. Fuck! I found my way through these nightmarish, shrimp-filled tunnels, and got the hell out of there when I recovered my items. I then headed towards the Ghost Pass, as new skills were awaiting me on the other side. Obviously enough, this place was filled to the brim with ethereal-like beings. Thanks to this, physical damage was useless, so I used spiritual varnishes to grant ethereal damage to my weapon. The expedition proceeded without any major problems, and I found an underground tunnel leading to a corrupted area with some strange looking enemies. I didn't want to fight inside corruption, as I didn't know how it would affect me, so I ran past them and arrived at the other side. I caught sight of an incredibly mighty looking creature on the horizon, and despite using my all-powerful balls, I still wasn't capable of knocking him down. I appeared back in Cierzo and used the opportunity to sell my stuff and buy this wide black hat, which increases my fire damage. And since I still wanted those succulent new skills, I strolled all the way back to the same spot. As you can see, teleportation is pretty rare, and walking is a core mechanic of Outward. Just like in Dark Souls 1, this makes me pay attention to where I'm going, and I end up getting to know the map a whole lot better than I would if I could just teleportate around. And although it can be boring at times, it teaches that this game is about a journey, not a destination, and I really appreciate that. Now, I eventually arrived and found out that our enemy was dead. I'm not sure what happened, but I suppose he died thanks to the bleeding. What really matters though is that I got his loot, and it will come in handy pretty soon. After that I marched forward through these corrupted lands, until I arrived to the Hermit House. Here I bought every basic skill from the Hermit, but since I was yet to know how I wanted to build my character, I didn't spend any breakthrough points. There are many trainers who teach different skill trees, and while you can always learn some of the skills, you need to spend one breakthrough point if you want to specialize in a specific tree. You only have 3 of these per game, so you need to choose wisely. I then bought an enchanting pedestal that I have no idea how to use and put my new skill, Mana Push, on the hotbar. This is a low-ranged one that deals high-impact damage in a wide area in front of me, so it will be pretty useful. With matters settled, I went exploring the crumbling city for personal gain, when I found the entrance to the corrupted tombs. I was pretty careful, since I didn't know what could be lurking around, and it proved to be the correct decision. I found the Wendigo right from the start, and attracted him to the myriad of traps that I had set up. It is with much pride that I say that the little fool couldn't even reach me. Weaklings die, big deal. I also found some of my League of Legends team members, but together with my shield charge and mana per skills, I could break the poise of virtually anyone, so I was pretty strong. There is some gruesome scenery down here, but anyways, I used my new Reveal Soul skill in conjunction with Spark to recover my mana, and kept on going. Henceforward everything was corrupted, and I became tainted, which increased my hunger rate by 100% and decreased my lightning resistance by 25%. I didn't mind it that much and continued on my way until I found the Talking Skull. Now I have truly seen everything. He asked me to find the other parts of his body, and I promised him that I would do so. At one point I was so crazy that even my demons started hunting me down. But I raced through all adversities, found his body, and arrived to this room. Nice. It seems like I can't stop the corruption right now, so I will need to progress on my main quest to do that. I took a little pause in Cierzo and crafted 2 new weapons, the Horror Axe and the Thorny Claymore. Both of them looked really badass, and while the former dealt decay damage and inflicted extreme poison, the latter had ethereal damage, which is extremely rare for a weapon. Despite that, I ended up using the Horror Axe a lot more, because the damage that it dealt was extremely high. And after all this exploration, there is one last place that we need to visit before heading on to a new map, the Vigil Pylon. Diseases run through the air, and I was attacked by a ferocious golem when trying to climb the tower, but I had already confronted stronger beasts. So I stood my ground and arrived to the top, where a delicious chest was awaiting me. I collected it and went inside Vigil Tomb, where I found more loot and 2 ethereal skeletons whom I killed without even needing to buff my weapon. And this was when I remembered that 1. I should take a bath, and 2. I still haven't cleared Voltaic Dungeon. I obviously prioritized the second one and went straight there. Granted, I died quite a few times, but I at least got the opportunity to meet this electrified mantis, which looked pretty dope. With everyone else dead, the final boss was last one standing, and I will rant for a little bit here, because holy cow, this ugly bastard is the most annoying piece of industrial garbage that I met in my entire life. I couldn't beat him up close because he kept running away, and I couldn't beat him up from afar either because he kept hiding his miserable fat ass behind this damn pillar. It also didn't work to lure him into the traps, because that dignified canned sausage had never exercised in his life, and therefore he didn't want to chase me down. I did grow a few grey hairs in the process, but since I will be bald by the time I'm 30, it doesn't matter that much. From all my suffering, I was rewarded with some pricey items, and the Light Mender's Lexicon, which will be pretty useful when we start using Runic Sorcery. And now, it is finally time to head to our new destination, in Merker Forests. Upon arrival, I immediately took a look at the map, and there was so much exciting stuff to see that I couldn't wait to explore everything. Apparently, spiritual beings freely roam around in these lands, and first thing that I did was to go to Berg, the city of this region. I started investigating it and learned the basic skills from the Wild Hunter and Rune Sage skill trees. I also paid 50 silvers to the blacksmith to repair my equipment, and even bought a pair of runic boots. And with everything settled, I went to try out my new runic sorcery. This one is very special, and I love how it works. Instead of pressing a button and casting a spell like in most games, you have 4 runes that don't do anything on their own, but can be combined in different ways to create powerful spells. I may unlock more in future, but these are the combinations I have available right now. Blue and purple to cast Runic Protection, red and purple to cast Runic Blade, green and blue to cast Runic Lantern, and finally, red and green to cast Runic Trap. They are all pretty intuitive, so I won't bother explaining them. Instead, let's talk about my adventures in this new area. I cleared the Dolmen Crypt dungeon, pushed this lever, and headed towards the Cabal of Wind Temple. With a name that mighty, it was bound to have something interesting in there. I carefully approached the temple, where I found an Immaculate at the entrance. This one didn't seem to be friendly though, so I set up a trap, buffed up and went into combat. Thing is that he was way tougher than I expected. I tried my luck nonetheless, but my effort was in vain as I didn't have what it took to beat him. Spike traps. Without any other option, I was forced to use my legendary skill, run the hell out of there, and prepare for our rematch. Alright, this ought to be enough. I took out a few uninvited guests that were loitering around, and lured the Immaculate to his demise. I accepted his generous loot and went inside the temple, where an army of corrupted monsters was awaiting me. But as the brave hero that I am, that didn't scare me in slightest. After all, the promise of great rewards far outweighed my fear of death. You know what? I might actually be a little scared, and I didn't really want those rewards. Oh, no, fuck! Even though I blacked out, I could hear the sounds of combats in the distance, and when I opened my eyes, there it was. The shiny hero that had come to my rescue. My body was tired and my hands trembling. Our chances of victory were very slim, but after a long fought battle, me and my friend suppressed mighty threat and lived to see another day. Well, he was already dead, but don't mind the details. I continued exploring the place and opening chests, but apart from that, there was nothing much to see. There is this bright, ominous lance at the center of the dungeon, but I can't interact with it or in fact do anything. I suppose we need to progress the main quest line if we want to continue, so we will need to wait a little bit before that. Not everything was in vain though, as I discovered that I could transform the cooking pot into a helmet. Tell me if this isn't one of the coolest things that you saw yet. I then returned to the city, repaired my equipment, and used my first breakthrough point to buy every ability from the Rune Sage skill tree. I really liked the runic magic, and with this new power up, my damage greatly increased and I gained access to more advanced runic combinations, such as Runic Heal, which will be very useful in combat. Even though we can use life potions, the drinking animation is longer than I wished, and it can be a death sentence sometimes. With runes, however, the cast is almost instantaneous, and it is easier to use it mid-combat. And by the way, since I don't have a house in this region, I'm using this backpack that I dropped on the ground to store my stuff. I know, it isn't the most honorable thing, but it works. With that said, I returned all the way to the Hermit's house in Chersonese to buy the breakthrough skills from the Cabal Hermits. It was a very long walk, but I really wanted to try out something, and I guarantee that it was worth it in the end. More on that later. It's worth mentioning that I raided the bandit camps on the way, and I absolutely demolished them. It's such a great feeling seeing progress that we made so far, and also seeing how much stronger we became. But enough with that. Back in Hell, I visited the Ancestors' resting place, on the northwestern side of the map. Even before entering it, I was greeted by a bandit wearing a full set of blue sand armor, and inside the dungeon, it wasn't any different. There were several bandits scavenging the place, but they were no match against high damage and extreme poison of my axe. Just like Eren, I killed everyone, found another locked door, and walked towards the giant burning tree. To my surprise, there were a bunch of burning men wandering the place. I would most likely burn to a crisp if they hit me, but I managed to evade their attacks and kill them. I investigated the surrounding area and found a burned out post. It looks like the bandits that inhabited this place are long gone, and the only ones left are the local wildlife that decided it would be cool to abuse me. To my utter surprise, I woke up in an underground hell surrounded by numerous burning men. I was finally back home, but I still needed to complete 100 days, so I tried to kill them with my ethereal traps, only to be humiliated once again and wake up inside a refrigerator. I was in a dire situation, so I tried to recover my burn stats, only to be ambushed and killed in the middle of the night. Did I mention that I love this game? At least I have my stuff, so I ain't complaining. I ran all the way back to the outpost, killed the deer flaming deer, and stole everything that I could. With that done, I went to explore the colossal hive in the southern part of the map. There was this little slide that reminded me of the bed of chaos from Dark Souls 1, and also new enemies. Most of them were really weak, but others not so much. Fortunately though, I had a card up on my sleeve. My ultimate, earth-shaking, maidenless magic dual-wielding. When I went back to Chersonese, I purchased the Wind Seagull from the Cabal Hermits, and I can now combine it with Fire Seagull to cast Spark. When I do this, it creates a fireball and a lightning spark that causes a lot of elemental damage. It also damaged the opponent's posture and even sets them on fire. Even with this powerful combo, however, it took a little while to take him down. But I finally did it, and got my hands on this wonderful chest as a reward. I also found a nearby dungeon called Hype's Trap, and the place was fitting for its name. But little did they know that they were the ones trapped with me, and not the other way around. I then went into another dungeon, found this weapon piercing through the body of a skeleton, and headed towards the visual pylon located at the eastern side of the map. To my astonishment, there was only a single chest inside it, which is pretty sus. I thought it might be a trap at first, but I was wrong. I then decided to investigate a little and found a hidden lever behind the chest. I pulled the lever and a secret door suddenly opened, unleashing the monster from the inside. And I just love it. This is exactly the type of experience that I'm looking for. I walked a little and came across this beautiful red moon. I really wanted to keep staring at it until the end of the day, but I needed to keep going. This one was a labyrinth-like dungeon filled with ethereal skeletons. They were strong as usual, but this time they weren't a threat for me. After all, I had a great runic blade that dealt a whopping 39 ethereal damage. And by the way, I can only use this thanks to the breakthrough point that I spent on the rune sage. I eventually reached the end, and was rewarded with an ornate and a legacy chest. After being killed by the deer flaming deer, of course. The ornate chest had loot as you would expect, and the legacy one had absolutely nothing. After a quick Google search, I learned that it can be used to send powerful items to subsequent playthroughs, which means that it is useless to us right now. I returned to Berg and noticed that a rumor was circulating around. It was about a royal manticore that had made its lair in the region. I left to investigate and prepared for battle after finding it. And if you are wondering why the Fire Seagull is burning more than usual, it is because I used the flint and steel, and now it burns the enemies that step on it. I lured the mighty beast to the seagulls and started blasting. Although the cooldown on Spark is short, it still exists, so I needed to defend against Manticore attacks in between casts. He was a tough opponent, and I almost died to his poison, but fortunately I managed to drink the antidote just in time. He dropped the Untitled Claymore, one of the best weapons I have seen so far. It was stupidly fast and it dealt incredible high damage and impact. It was a god tier weapon, that's for sure, but I don't like the claymores that much in this game, so I will just save it for now. Despite our victory, it wasn't over yet. Upon entering the Royal Manticore's lair, I faced a bunch of manticores and troglodytes, and even found some free nightmare fuel. The rewards were good though, so once again I can't complain. Now, there is only one place left to explore before we leave to another region and start progressing on the main storyline. It is called the Face of the Ancients, and it is located on the northeastern part of Enmerker Forest. Before that though, I prepare some delicious termite potage to restore our mana, and use the prime meat from the manticores to cook 3 alpha sandwiches. This will give us health recovery 4 and grant us the rage boon for a short period of time, which will increase our impact damage by 25%. I also packed weather defense potions to deal with extreme temperatures, and I was now good to go. I casted my buffs, consumed my supplies, and stepped inside Stone Ancient. The first part of the maze was filled with burning men and obsidian elementals, and even though I barely managed to take this one out, I could always use the Runic Heal to recover a big portion of my health, so it was all good. I arrived at this hellish, yet beautiful statue, and it required the Scarlet Leech's idol to be activated. So I ignored the big chest ahead for now and progressed to the second part of the dungeon. I was jump scared by this giant lizard and ran for my life when I realized that I wasn't dealing barely any damage. That's right, he was way stronger than I expected, but I was willing to try again and determined to take him down. This time I managed to activate both my seagulls and use my special dual combo. This is how it went. Even him wasn't a match for my mighty conjurations, and I was rewarded with one of the best weapons in the game, the Sky Crown Mace. With a whopping 48 damage, splitted between physical and frost, and a staggering 15 impact, this one-handed mace will serve as my weapon from now on. I will surely miss the extreme poison from my axe, but it is what it is. I found the Scarlet Leech's idol and received this legendary dagger when activating the statue. It seems like a pretty good one, but I will not use it. With the entirety of Enmerker Forest cleared, it was finally time to pack my belongings and pay 200 silvers to the Soroborian caravaner to take me to Harmattan, one of the most advanced cities and the location of my faction of choice. I stored my stuff on a backpack on the ground and took the time to explore the city. I found this beautiful claymore at Weaponsmith and couldn't resist to waste my hard-earned money to try it out. I never wielded it once again. I explored all the different shops and stumbled across the Sorobor Academy. I then talked to everyone and found this hidden lab. I couldn't do anything in there, but there was some rather suspicious stuff happening inside. I just ignored it for now and signed up for the academy. They gave me 3 days to chill before starting my quests, so I used this time to explore the new region, and the scenery was absolutely gorgeous. The map was also huge and full of points of interest, so I was kind of afraid that I would get lost. I walked down the streets and was humbled by the very first enemies that I saw. This is gonna be a tough one. I got my revenge on this other group of doggies, and stumbled across this cultist protecting a blood altar. He had a strange weapon on its hand, but he was weak, so I killed him with this. I approached the gruesome blood altar, and it seems like I can use it to upgrade one of my items. I didn't know which items would work on it though, so I left it untouched for now. I kept mindlessly wandering around until I arrived to the corrupted cave. There was this ominous looking enemy inside it, and even though he looked pretty tough, I managed to break his poise and kill him before he could do anything. This mace really is overpowered. I faced some other enemies, stole everything that I could, and found a family of these cutie little beaver-like creatures. With a bag full of precious loot in our bag, I returned home and found this disabled golem within city. I needed 3 power coils to repair it, so I made it my mission to get them. And given that I was part of the Soroborian Academy, I was now capable of buying a house for a symbolic price of 500 silvers. It was kinda expensive, but at least we don't need to sleep on the floor anymore. And although it was not very spacious, the house had everything that I needed, so I was extremely happy with my purchase. And considering that I still had some time before starting the quest, I went to explore a little bit more. Even though the roads were somewhat empty, I still managed to find this ravaging buffalo. Tell me if this isn't the most stunning creature that you have ever seen. I also came across this polluted building, and as far as I know, danger equals money, so I went to investigate it. The place was filled with misbehaved doggies, sword golems and this thing, whatever that is. With the enemies defeated, I seized this well-deserved chest and returned to Berg to repair the broken golem.
Harmattan, the punishment for your hubris is at hand. The Forge Master demands justice. Long have I languished, the chains Sorobor cast upon me. My sacrifice forgotten, their crimes unpunished. No more. The wheels of my power are once more in motion. Your ancient factory is bent to my will. Surrender all who serve Sorobor Academy by the end of 100 days, or make your peace with the 5 winds.
Out of nowhere, this piece of junk has set me on a mission to rescue the entire city of Harmattan within a tight deadline of 100 days, while suffering severe consequences if I was to fail this task. I searched his body and found out that I needed to investigate the ruins of the Antique Plateau to prevent the disaster from happening. For better or for worse, it is already day 99, and I will leave this problem for future me, in case I ever do a 200 days of Outwards. Let me know down below in the comments if you are interested. Since 3 days had already passed, I went back home and gave a purity potion to this guy to progress on the main storyline. I also took this opportunity to visit the military branch of the academy. And met this guy called Victor. He told me that I could get a much faster promotion if I did a little task for him. It seems like Victor sent both his apprentices on different liveries. That ended up a little complicated. Basically, they messed up and now he wants my help. With that in mind, I bought all the basic skills from the nearby skill trainer and went to the ancient bunker on the northwest of the Antique Plateau to retrieve the stolen package. I made it there without any major problems and talked to the 4-Wind gang leader. He proposed a simple deal. I give him the supplies that he wants, and he gives me the stolen package in exchange. To which I replied, "That's surprisingly fair, alright, I will be back with your goods." And then proceeded to buff myself up and kill them all. I know, it was a bit underhanded, but he's a bandit in the first place, and most importantly, he said that I wasn't a badass, so I needed to prove him wrong. With this I had retrieved the package, but I still wanted to stay a little bit longer and investigate the place. The zone was filled with Kazite bandits and troglodytes, which are basically the same. I continued until the end and was surprised by this magnificent train. It truly felt magical and even divine to some degree. To make things even better, I was able to ride it to a bunch of new locations, and I chose the research laboratory as our first destination. When I arrived, I was met with a giant door and a large command console in the middle of the room. I interacted with it, And I know it sounds crazy, but there was a critical situation where an important asset escaped containment and triggered an emergency lockdown. Moreover, it seems like there are actual people stuck behind this door, and we need to kill 4 Guardian class golems and get their keys to unlock it. Based on my deductions, this asset we are talking about is likely responsible for Scourge in this world, and the people who got trapped inside were meant to prevent the disease to propagate. Or maybe I'm just hallucinating. I'm not too sure if that's what's going on, but I'm eager to discover, and since there was nothing else to see, I went to our next destination, the Ancient Foundry. Here I bumped into a broken sword golem and a rather mighty looking dog. There was no need to face it head on, so I used the terrain to my advantage and managed to suppress the blood-seeking beast. With my newfound confidence, I steadily progressed to the dungeon and arrived at a spacious room filled with burning men and molten forge golems. I really wanted to discover what was inside it, but unfortunately the time went up. And this was the end of our 100 days in Outwards. If you want to go into another adventure with me, make sure to watch this video right here. And I hope that you enjoyed this game as much as I did. I'm willing to make a 200 days video, so please let me know if you are interested in seeing that. With all that said, I was ripped. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.